Welcome back to another episode of Bossy, Brilliant, and Badass. I'm Lisa Lindsay here with my successful co-host. I think that's a repeat, but that's okay. Liz Green.
Hey, Lisa. Yeah, I don't know if it's a repeat or not. We've had, how many episodes are we on?
About 82.
Okay. So maybe we can start
sure.
doubling it up now.
Listen, I think that's
Like how
fine.
how many adjectives are there out there
I think
that
a
are
lot,
appropriate?
but right. I was just going to say the same thing. I don't
Appropriate.
think we can do it all.
Right.
Oh my goodness. How are things, Liz?
Things are great. Living the dream. What about you?
Same way. I feel like we're in that point in the year where it's kind of like, okay, all right, let's get to the end of the year already. I'm ready for it to be over. I want a new year now. But yes,
new year. Yes.
It's
in a couple of months,
busy.
oddly enough. Right?
So fast. So
oh my
fast.
gosh.
So fast.
It has gone by so fast. And I was thinking today, actually, it was about 2.5 years ago that you and I first started talking about doing something together. And I thought, oh my goodness, that has just whizzed by. 2.5 years has gone by like that.
Just
but
like
yes,
that.
so much has happened.
So much has happened.
Right.
Yeah, time has been warped, I think, personally. So I don't remember anything anymore.
I don't really either. I'm just like, okay, I feel like I'm this kind of warped, weird COVID time machine. Like, who knows what's going on? But the end of the year is coming in a couple of months.
I know.
So 2022.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So as we gear up for the end of the year, we're starting to kind of do some episodes that look towards the end of the year, right? And what that looks like and how we can kind of maximize our success and things like that.
Right.
And I guess this week I loved her. I don't know.
I did
loved
too.
her. Loved our conversation with her. And it's a fairly long one, longer than we usually do, but all of it is so great. So listen to the whole thing. But I think it just totally makes sense for us to just jump right into the episode and start our
let's jump right in. And just like a bit of a teaser, it is around the not the glass ceiling. She describes it more as, what was her term?
She used the term upper limits, but it's more like you hit a plateau, right? You hit a ceiling and it's like, how do you break past that?
Right. How do you break past that? And a lot of it's about really kind of younger selves driving the car ourselves at 4 or 5 years old. So her questions are so powerful. And I think you guys are going to love it because you can just really reflect on the questions for yourselves. I know Lisa and I did here in the interview. It's just fantastic. So let's get her on. Her name is Sarah Walton, and she's a business coach and she's an author. And she has her own podcast called Game on Girlfriend Podcast. And she is so funny and she's so insightful. So without further ado, let's bring her on.
Sarah, welcome to the show. So good to have you here.
Oh my gosh, you guys, this is so great. It's like the Lisa and Liz show. I don't know. I know that that's not what it's called, but you guys are like the Lisa and Liz show. It's kind of cool.
Well, let's see, there was another name. We spent all that time looking for names when all we had to do was...
We could have just gone with the Lisa and Liz show and not sweat it.
I know, right? So thank you so much. All right. So we are going to talk a little bit about upper limits, right?
Yes, please.
And that's going to sound foreign to our audience because what the heck is that? So I think that that's a perfect place for us to start. Sarah, what the heck is that? What's an upper limit problem?
It's exactly what it sounds like. You know how forever they talked about how women had glass ceilings, right? Forever, right? And we all joked and put up all the broken glass when, Kamala Harris became vice president, right? Like, 'cause that's the joke, because there's this glass ceiling.
Right.
And, we have those that we've put there as well. For each one of us individually, we all have our own glass boxes. And we call these upper limits, or I call them upper limits. And I did not coin this term. Let me be very clear. This comes from a book that Gay Hendricks wrote back in a long time ago. And it's called The Big Leap is the name of that book. And for those of you interested in reading it, you can grab that. But this is where he sort of, at least as far as I've been able to like research and discover, this was the first time inside that book that people started talking about it. And I've taken the idea of upper limits and sort of changed it a little bit, especially for women. I think especially after what happened in 2020, we have to start looking at all these business ideas through not just the old white man's view, right? But there's a lot of different views for us to look at business through. And this upper limit issue is still here. And what I really would love to do today is talk to you guys about what the usual suspects are for most of us. And really talk about how, if a listener, right, if you guys are listening right now and you're like, oh my gosh, I have been stuck at 6 figures for 352 years, or, oh my gosh, I am on a sales call drought, right? Like that happens to people. Like my business is rock and rolling and I've hit some sort of weird plateau. That's probably upper limit problem.
Right. So it's sort of about like breaking past sort of stasis in a way, right? Like you're just kind of stuck in place. All right. Excellent. So I'm happy to do what you suggest and have you lead us down the path and talk about it in the way that you would love to. So where would you like to start?
Well, you know, what's really interesting, you guys, is I think it's been the last 3 or 4 weeks. I hope I have my time right. I don't know if it's just me, but time seems to be moving a little oddly lately, but thanks pandemic. But in the last 3 to 4 weeks, there's been this new term that has started to sort of make its way into the zeitgeist for women. And so before we jump exactly into the upper limits, I want to talk about high functioning codependence. Have you guys heard that term yet?
I have not heard it specifically, but
I believe I'm one of them.
I was like, I know somebody who might be one.
I am a high functioning codependent.
Yeah, just the name. Everybody goes, me. I don't even have to say what it means. Everyone's like, yes, that's me. But so I just want to kind of have this conversation. And this is new. Like normally when I talk about upper limits, I have not been talking about high functioning codependence, but I think they kind of go hand in hand. And high functioning codependence is something that women are trained to do. All of us that it starts very young, and we're really starting to it's one of the many systems that are being challenged at the moment that have just sort of been in place because they were in place and nobody examined them. And that's just kind of the way it was. So we're examining it now. And the idea is that as a woman, it's okay for you to overfunction to the point of sheer exhaustion and passing out and being put in the madhouse like they used to do with people, right? Like it's okay for you to overfunction at that level as long as everyone else is comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That hit, didn't it? Yeah. It's like, oh,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. A step further when you actually get applause for that and praise. Like, oh, she's exhausted. She's just spent great. Good work.
You worked hard. Yes.
Yeah. That's the codependence piece. We get rewarded for it. And so we get sucked into it too. So now everybody's relying on us for everything. We're about to drop dead, but they're like, oh, she's so selfless. Literally no self.
A loving mom and wife and such a great business. Oh God. Yeah.
She can do it all, that woman.
Oh my God. I don't know how she does it.
Meanwhile, she's like banging her head on walls and crying in the bathroom before people wake up, right? It's like, who cares? As long as you look it on the outside, sister. Like it's that kind of craziness. And so as we go through these upper limit questions, we got to do it through that filter now. Like I said, this is not the old white man's way to do this. Like this is different now. And we're talking about women, we're talking about social change. We're talking about what's happening inside your own business and being wary of searching for your upper limits inside of this idea of high functioning codependence. This is not a conversation where I want people going, oh, yeah, I should stay up till 3 writing emails. Oh my God, yes, I should overbook myself and take on 15 more clients because I have an upper limit. No, that's not what we're talking about. Like, no. Chances are you have some sort of upper limit idea that's holding you where you are. And you have high functioning codependence running in the background, which is having you chase your tail even more because you've got to look like you've got it all together. On top of the upper limit problem. Does that make sense?
A lot of pressure. Yes.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense, Sarah. And I love that you're setting the tone in this way because when we talk about being stuck, it always somehow feels like it translates to us not doing enough.
Correct.
Of something, whatever that is, right? When usually that's not the case because we are working hard.
Yeah, I would say almost always.
Right. It doesn't necessarily mean do more of the thing isn't working. It's probably do more of something else. But I don't know if I'm treading into your territory there, but let's.
No,
let's
oh my God. My favorite though is like the second I say high functioning codependence, how excited you both got. It was like me, right? And I have a feeling the listeners just did the same thing. They're like, oh my God, how did she know? Was she watching? No, you're just alive right now. Welcome to the party. All right. So, okay. So this actually leads well. So now that we've kind of set the tone, and we are not talking about beating ourselves up. We're not talking about doing more and more and more and more to hit these upper limits, right? Or to break through these upper limit problems, remove the barriers in our way. As you look at where in your life you are making sure everyone else is comfortable, but you, this is usually where barrier number one comes in. Like, so you've hit your upper limit. This is barrier number one. And it is a deep-seated belief that you are fundamentally flawed. Ooh. And yeah, yeah. Like somewhere along the line, your circuits got messed up. Like you're just wrong. Like and they're going to find out. And you can see right there in barrier number one in an upper limit problem, you've got high functioning codependence because you've got to keep it going so that nobody else knows how fundamentally flawed you are.
Well, the opposite of that in my mind, I heard fundamentally flawed, but then the twist on that for me is perfectionism, right? That's how we then drive ourselves is to this ideal that really doesn't exist, which I have a super huge problem with, but we won't talk about it. But, you know, there's just this driving yourself to this ideal that doesn't exist because there's no such thing as perfection at all, right? So go ahead, Sarah.
Right. And then it's anything that we can do to not let everybody know how flawed we really are.
Or we think we are.
Right. But that's our story in our head, that I am flawed, right?
Yep. And it usually comes in, you guys, it comes in early. Like we are talking about a look across the room when you were eating dinner. We're talking about that time, you know, you didn't tie your shoe just right. We're talking about the time you witnessed domestic violence. We're talking about, right? Some people, it was a small thing. Some people, it was a big thing. But there
little T's and big T's.
That's right. Yes, that's right. And some point along the line in childhood, right? We all know psychologically our childhoods shaped us, right? Our race, our age, the size of our bodies, all this stuff is like shaping us all the time. And what we're picking up all the time is where we're wrong and how wrong we actually are. And a lot of the times we'll do whatever we can to start to hide that. The biggest moment for most people where you are fundamentally flawed, those of you driving, please keep your eyes on the road. Okay. Because you can remember there was probably a time when you were 4 or 5 was the first time you really realized out there in the world that something's wrong. Mom and dad were fighting. You saw something you shouldn't see. You got the answer wrong in kindergarten. Like pick a thing, but it was the first time you saw that something could be wrong. And as children, we don't see that something's wrong out there, right? We see that something's wrong with us. And so it actually turns into something's wrong here. And that in seconds turns into there's something wrong with me. And you know this is true if you've ever been around small children and you play hide and seek and you say, okay, it's your turn to hide, and they cover their eyes. Because if they can't see, you can't see. There's no distinction yet between themselves and the world. So we have to have some compassion for ourselves. And this fundamental flaw we picked up was like so far before we could even understand what we had just done, what we had just put on ourselves because we saw something was wrong, right? We did drop the glass on the floor, or mom and dad were fighting, or whatever happened in the neighborhood that was bad. Oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. Because at that age, if there's something wrong with the world, you should have been able to fix it. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, because physiologically it is about us when we're children, and that's how it's supposed to be.
That's right.
Right. But then the negatives, then that also turns into, okay, there's something wrong with me. What did I do? That's my fault. Yeah.
Yep.
That's amazing. I mean, the thing I kept thinking about is like all those TV shows where they actually, I don't know that TV shows always represent life, but where they sit down with kids and, you know, mom and dad are getting a divorce. And the first question is, what did I do wrong? Or something like that. Right. Yeah. Which is just so crazy because no, that has absolutely nothing to do with you.
Right.
Yeah, it's always about you when you're a kid. Yeah. It's so awful. And then of course we carry that with us throughout our lives.
Yeah. That stays with us. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. And so, but you guys can see how the high functioning codependence takes hold, right? Because we get accolades. We get accolades, right? Like you said, Liz, you nailed that the second I said it, like, oh, but then they reward us. So now it's like, oh, they don't know. They don't know I'm fundamentally flawed. They don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know. Right. And so you're getting juice off of that. Meanwhile, there's nothing wrong with you in the first place, because like a 4-year-old is running your show right now. Like, let's talk about that for a second, right? Hello. So for those of you that think this might actually be your upper limit problem. So, you know, if you're working in your business, you've hit this plateau financially, you're not able to get past it. You want to look at what you think your fundamental flaw might be, right? So this is, and when you do this work or just sort of sit down, and a lot of people, the second I say 3 or 4, they know what it is in it, like a heartbeat. They know exactly the moment that I'm talking about. And other people, it takes a little bit of time, but if you can find it, the idea is that you can undo what a 4-year-old did. You can say, oh, actually, nobody said I was stupid. I did. Oh, nobody said I wasn't lovable. I did. Nobody said I wasn't capable. I did. And that puts the power right back in your hands, because you'll recognize that if you're the one who did it, you're the one who can undo it. Undo it. 100%. Which is incredibly powerful, right? So it just immediately pulls the power right back. So if that seems to be your upper limit problem, your upper limit barrier, that's how you work through that. Does that make sense, you guys?
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. All right. You ready for number 2? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not outside of ourselves. It's inside of ourselves. Therefore, we can adjust, right? We can heal. Yeah. Compared to it's always on the outside. So that's, you know, then that's where the power is.
Right. Right. It's a big shift. Right. But huge shift. You know, but as business owners, we know the buck stops with us, and it's different when you can find a barrier and unlock it even yourself.
When you start to hear it, see it, recognize it. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. You know,
good
Lisa.
stuff.
You know. So this next one's great. Yeah. Barrier number 2 is great. I love this one, especially for our amazing fellow entrepreneurs who struggle with health, right? Because we know health is like the number one like asset that we have in our businesses. And I personally struggle with weight a lot. It's something I really have to work on hard. And so this barrier tends to hit me around that issue. I'm not saying it will for everybody, but for a lot of people it can. And the other place it really tends to hit people is around money. And so this barrier is that if I am truly successful, I will be abandoned or I'm being disloyal.
Oh.
You had a response to that, Lisa?
We're going to cut that part out.
No way. That was the best response ever. That was like, it's like I slapped you upside. Yeah. You are going to be abandoned or you are disloyal. This is a big one. And so the abandonment piece comes from, especially this is why who you hang out with matters. Right. So if I get super successful, my friends won't enjoy being around me anymore, or they'll only be around me because I'm successful.
What about how it manifests itself, right? They're only around you because you're successful, and you also do things to ensure that they stick around.
Bingo. Yeah. That's a fear of abandonment, and it's keeping you stuck.
Yep.
Right. That's an upper limit barrier. And it's really interesting where this shows up in different areas. And you could see how this is why I said money's a big hotspot for this one, right? Because it's like, and celebrities go through this a lot. Like they had their buddies and then they got famous and they're like, are you for me? I'm still real, you know, like it can kind of go both ways.
Right. I'm still your friend. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still the same person, but are you still here just because of the money? Like it can kind of cause that funkiness. And so again, the direct course to this one is to really open your mouth, like just talk about it and be like, this is happening right now. Are you sensing it as well? And immediately it's gone. That is like the crazy part about this one is if you actually say to somebody, especially around abandonment and friends, family, it can be tougher, but with friends, immediately, if you just come right out and say, you guys, I'm really worried about this. I'm feeling really funky. Especially as a person who's doing better, that can be uncomfortable, but just be like, do you guys ever feel weird? Have I changed at all? Like, can you just reality check me a little bit and really sit with people and talk? And that can just make it go away. And it's a really generous thing to do, by the way, you guys, if you have a friend who has gotten successful, it's more generous if it comes from the friends who are not like hitting new levels of success to come in and go, we love you so much. And we hope you're not feeling weird, because I know it can get weird. And that just, it like pops the balloon and the tension's gone.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the abandonment piece. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're thinking about this in context of our businesses, this idea of our keeping ourselves stuck just in case, keeping ourselves at 6 figures, let's call it, just in case, because I don't want people to start to feel weird around me. I don't want them to, disappear, because I want to keep my friends around. Lord help me.
No, it's a big one.
And don't you think a lot of that can be on an unconscious, subconscious level as well? Just really kind of not really even being aware of that, but yet somehow it's kind of simmering in there.
Yeah. And that's why we're talking about it, because remember I said it was glass, right? Like you don't, this is not something you're like, I'm going to be a jerk to my friends today. Like, this is not something that we go out and like, I'm going to ruin my friends.
Imagine?
Yeah, I know. I'm just going to be a jerk today because she made a lot of money. Like, that's not how we're approaching this, right? Like, these are way invisible. And that's why conversations like this are so important, because you can start to bring them to light. And once they're in light, it's almost like, if you have a dark corner in the room and you put a flashlight in it, the darkness is gone. You know what I mean? Like, just by sheer of shining the light on it, it goes away. And that's what a lot of these are. It's why I love teaching this, because it's so fast, it's so effective, and it's free. Like, you can just start applying it and start checking it in. So let's talk about the disloyalty. And this one's my favorite. So the way that you get at disloyalty, so we have abandonment sort of covered, right? It's kind of easy to see abandonment. Disloyalty tends to hide even further. And disloyalty, the great way to get at disloyalty, there's 2 questions. The first question is, am I breaking an unspoken rule in my family?
Yes.
Dad has to make the most money. You can't show up your parents, right? Rich people are jackals, right? Like, these are the things that we're talking about. Like, there's this unspoken rule that if you become one of those people, right? If you become one of, for me, the skinny people, right? Like, if you become something like that, you are upstaging your father, your mother, your sister, your aunt, your grandmother, whatever it is. And so that's kind of those unspoken rules. Does that make sense, you guys?
Absolutely. Especially if you come also like from a deprived family financially, right? It's like, you don't want to hear or feel from whomever, who do you think, so you're this now, who do you think you are? And like you said, like, you're one of those people now, you're not one of us anymore. And that disloyal, but also there's the abandonment piece in that as well, right?
Yeah, that's why these go together.
The same thing. I was just going to say the same thing, because I'm still hearing the abandonment piece as well. When you are being classified as an other for whatever the reason is, you still might feel, oh, well, okay, I guess I'm one of the other, and I kind of don't want to be that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I know. And then this one, go ahead.
So how do we, so with friends and whatnot, you're saying, okay, just bring it up, bring it to light, shine the flashlight. With family, that might be a little bit more tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky. There's no question, because you grew up breathing it, right? It's that old joke we all say about, like, how does a fish know about water? Well, it can't, right? A fish has no idea that water exists because it's always been in it, right? It's like all of us with high functioning codependency. It's like you guys will watch over the next couple of days. You'll be like, crap, I just did it again. I just said yes to something I didn't want to, or I just did the dishes, or I just did whatever. Like, it's nonstop, right? And family does that as well. So we get into these family situations where that's just the way it is. So when you go back and you're looking at where you're fundamentally flawed, and that's why that exercise is so important, is you're going to recognize you now have the ability to start to rewrite that with family based on your own family situation. And I always tell people to trust their gut, because right? Whether or not this is a conversation you have out loud, or if it's a conversation that you declare yourself and then you share with colleagues, right? Or maybe you share with some of your best friends to go, you guys, I just realized I've been stuck at 6 figures, because if I hit 7, I'm a millionaire, right? And that's going to put me in another category inside my family. And what I want to share with you is I'm now declaring that dead, right? and I will hit 7 figures, and I need your support in that because my little me is going to want to pull me back into that. So I need to be able to call you and go, I'm upper limiting myself again, or I'm smacking myself around, or the unspoken rule in my family is about to be broken and I need to share that with somebody. And so you can turn it to other people. Now, if you have a new relationship with your parents or your family, you can actually go back in. Like I'm saying, everybody knows their own relationship with their parents. You guys got to trust your own judgment to be, and especially if someone's passed away and you want to write a letter or anything like that, I absolutely suggest you do that because you know what changes for you. And if you have a parent that has worked on themselves as well and maybe changed or apologized for the way things happened when you were younger, you know what those relationships look like. You're going to go, oh my gosh, mom, dad, brother, sister, whatever. I just realized, did you know we had an unspoken rule about this? Did you guys get that? And sometimes other people go, oh my God, I never thought of it. And you can have an incredible family conversation about it, right? Without making anybody wrong or without blaming anybody. And now you've opened it up for everybody else too, which is great because we're breaking more glass boxes all over the place, which is awesome. So you can have this moment of opportunity inside your own family to break the cycle. Does that make sense?
Yes. Love it.
Yeah. But it's all in conversation. Always. It's never in your head. And it's never, oh, I had a nice epiphany when I heard a podcast once. Like if you wanted to actually stick, you got to get in conversation. And there's one other, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
I just talk and talk. I know it's great.
It's totally fine.
But what about, is it, so you're saying in conversation, now, can that include a therapist or a group therapy and that type of thing? Or are you recommending that it should be what are your thoughts around that? Does it have to be with the actual family members or close friends? Can it be in a safe place, like with a therapist?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Therapists are fantastic for that stuff because you're in that space where you're not going to be judged, right? We're dealing about upper limits. The judgment is smeared all over the place. You already think you're fundamentally flawed. You're terrified you're going to be abandoned by the people who love you the most. This is a very tender place to be. And so that's why I say you always got to use your own judgment. What I will say is therapists are fantastic. I tell everybody I know everyone should have a therapist, especially now. I'm a big believer in that. I think that's really critical to all of our growth and development. And also, especially as women, as our place in the world right now and what we're going to be bringing to the world in the coming years and how these doors are opening in new ways. Having a therapist by your side is really important. And for lasting change, conversations with people who are in your day-to-day life will matter. Now, always safety first, right? You got to know who in your life you can talk to and who you can't. And that is up to the incredibly intelligent listeners, right? To each sort of pick out for each one of us to be that's something I'm not doing that, right? But start with therapy for sure. I think that's a great place to start to dig this out and start, I think we had some unspoken rules in my family, and they'll jump on that in 2 seconds because they know what they are. They'll be yep, let's talk about them.
Yeah. And I mean, and that might be a place to sort of practice. If you do want to go talk to your family, you can practice what you need to say, that kind of thing. Because if it's a family thing, sometimes depending on how old you are, or how long things have been going on, like you just said, Sarah, you don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah. You don't want to trigger the little you inside too, which is just going to retreat even more, do the same, kind of lead the way in the same fashion, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And Lisa, I love what you said about kind of not role modeling, but modeling the conversation before it happens. And what that can do, Liz, to your point, is it's like mama's home, right? And you put the little you behind you, go, mama's got this one. It's okay. Yeah, right. And that's sort of an energy bringing it to. And I think as women, that's part of releasing the high functioning codependence too, right? Because that infantilizes us to some point to the doer. We don't have it. We don't have value in and of ourselves just for being here. We have value when we do stuff. That's not correct, right? So it's that same thing like mama's home. Yep. It's that same type of energy to release this. Yeah. Like, baby, I got you. Don't worry. Yeah.
And I want to, just for people listening to the podcast, I want to kind of point out what Sarah's doing, which is she's putting the child behind her back, like that actual hand motion, because even if there's not a physical child there, but the idea of sort of moving that person to behind you and placing yourself in front what that physical movement does for you mentally when you do it that way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well said. And yeah, I just love that. It's kind of concretizing, putting the child behind. All right. I got this. You're the, I'm the adult here. You're the kid. And then you can step into that, self energy.
Yep. I highly recommend that. And, for those of you that are super challenged with this, or it feels really confrontational, or you're starting to beat yourself up mentally, because remember, we promised we weren't going to do that. What I do to some of my clients when they really get challenged in these moments is I'll say, great, could you please go find a photo of yourself age 3 or 4 and talk to that photo the way you just talked to yourself. And they'll be like, no, right. And that's the idea, is we have to get clear about where the child has been released and where the adult comes in. And Lisa, I really am grateful that you highlighted what I was actually doing physically, because I teach people to do that. When you're nervous, actually pretend you're putting the little you behind you. Mama's home. That's my phrase. Mama's home. I got this.
Yeah.
But that idea that the grown-up's in charge, because kids ache for that, right? Like kids ache for somebody to be in charge and take care of them. And that's where a lot of this fundamental flaw, unspoken rule stuff comes from, is like, there wasn't an adult taking control, right? There wasn't an adult protecting the child. And so that's our job now.
Right.
Yeah. So one other question, if you feel like the unspoken rule in your family didn't quite get you to the disloyalty / abandonment piece, the other question you can ask is, even though I'm successful, did I not meet my parents' expectations? Because that can be another way to get to your disloyalty and abandonment. Because sometimes if you're mad at your parents, we have this lie where we pretend if we mess up our own lives, then they'll know, then they'll be sorry. And it's this idea of like, no, actually they're fine. So you might want to clean that up just for yourself. And so that's a great question to ask too. If you didn't quite get there with the unspoken rules, sometimes it's checking in. Did I not meet their expectations and I'm mad at them for that? Or I feel bad about that. Either way, does that make sense? Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. You guys ready for barrier number 3?
Let's do it.
It's kind of close to this one. It's the idea that if I'm successful, I'll be a burden.
Ooh, say more.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going to say.
I'll be a burden. If you're truly successful, you'll become high maintenance, right? You'll need nicer things. Your family's going to have to be aware of the fact you're successful, and then that's going to burden them. Is she okay? Is she working too hard? Is this okay? Is that happening? Is she a good enough mom? All the things that women usually tend to be up against. And then we can also be worried that the success itself will be a burden, period. So I have to have somebody manage the money, a burden for us. Someone's going to have to help me manage the money. I'm going to have a bigger house. What if I screw up and I get canceled? Like there's all that extra burden. Like, let me just fly under the radar instead.
So
where I can.
Fear of success really is what I'm sort of hearing a little bit.
Me too.
Right?
Fear of success. Yeah.
And the trappings of success.
Yep. And also what that does to those you love. Are you now a burden to those that you love? Like, it's like, oh gosh, there she goes again. That kind of a feeling of like, oh God. And it can go along too with the abandonment piece with your friends, right? Of like, oh, there she goes again. Stupid lady. So yeah, she's so annoying. So what we can do with this one is really
and that's one of the biggest fears, isn't it? To be kicked out from your tribe.
Yeah.
It's like a whole legacy thing with that, being kicked out by your tribe. That's a huge one for women.
And Liz, you're actually hitting sort of the underscore of all 4 barriers. You're absolutely getting it, right? It's that idea that, the fundamental flaw is going to be exposed. I won't be getting my codependent, candy because I'm not going to be as high functioning. Like this, all that underpinnings, and the last barrier really underscores this as well. And so I really appreciate you saying that, because you're hitting it right on where all of us have this deep-seated fear. We can see it anywhere in society too, right? Like, pick an argument people are having today, you can just feel the fear on both sides, right? It doesn't even, it's like so transparent. And so we have to understand for us, because all we can do is be responsible for our own actions inside of everything that's happening, is the personal responsibility piece in this, and having a little bit of compassion, or a lot of compassion, for our fear of being kicked out and being found out, or not quite fitting, all these things. Like, you can hear it in every single barrier, that's sort of the underpinning there. So those of you, if you have what we call, like you said, Lisa, the fear of success, or the worry that success will somehow be an a burden, not an abandonment, a burden, that what you can do is write out what you're most afraid of, and then share that again with a colleague or someone you trust, and be like, can I just get this out of my head? Because there's something really powerful for us as humans, as we just said, Liz, you hit it, right? Like, we're afraid we're going to get kicked out. Something incredibly powerful about knowing that somebody else is holding that information for you. Does that make sense? Like, it's kind of being shared.
Yeah.
The weight of it gets shared with somebody you trust, right? So you can like,
person.
Yeah, the right person. Yeah. Correct. We don't go running around going, I think success is a burden, because like, that's not quite what we're after there. Right? And then the last thing you want to do on that exercise is just go back and say, is that true?
Right.
Is that true?
And that is a technique that I like to use when I'm talking to people, especially my friends and stuff like that. I always like to have people challenge their beliefs of what is actually true, and I will say that that came as a part of my training as a coach, but I recall it because it is one of our very first coaching classes, which Liz and I were actually in together. The instructor, I remember her directly challenging my truth as well in that way. And I find it to be an incredibly powerful tool, incredibly powerful question to ask yourself, whether something is true or not. What has actually been true?
Right.
What has actually been true?
What has actually been true, and what's the belief there? Exactly. Yeah, I use that tool as well in my coaching, where it's, we're in IFS, internal family systems, we speak to the different parts of us. And then what are you so afraid of? Okay, what's so bad about that? What's so bad about that? And just get right down to the nitty gritty. And then, of course, it's always a little kid's voice at the end of the tunnel, right?
So true.
So true. The amazing thing about just kind of the theme of what we're talking about here as well is literally we have kids running our lives. Can you imagine?
Yes.
Right? Like, can you imagine like the reality of having a kid, your kid, somebody else's kid? Think of a kid. I'm sure we all know one or two. Think about that person running your life in real life.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And I like the idea of the photograph too, Sarah.
Yes.
Taking a picture of yourself when you're 5 and being like, all right, so this is me running my life, driving the car.
I'm sorry, do I want her on that next call with that sponsor or not? I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting.
You do not know what you're doing. You do not know what you're talking about. You don't know anything. Come on.
I love you, but you're going to sit behind me now. Yeah, it's the same idea. Like, and it's always with love, and it's always with kindness, but mama's home. Mama's home. Yeah. I just love that idea. And the other question, you guys, because I'm so glad we went into the is that true piece, because I think that's really critical. There's two things that happen. There's another question. Sorry. So the first question is that true? As you're writing out how success could be a burden, or in anything, right? This is the other thing. If you find yourself in a conversation and you're starting to like get heated, or you're defending something and you're like, what is going on with me? Right. Or like, and it could be over something stupid, like that sweater's blue. No, it's not, it's black. It's like, why am I worrying about like what, like you could start to kind of feel yourself getting like weird. Or not your best self. Mama's not home now.
I call it tight because I get.
Can you get tight?
I literally
Mama's
get tight.
Not home
like
now. Yeah, well, it's what we call an IFS being parts led, not self led, parts led, meaning little kids all over the place.
Oh, I like that. I haven't heard it called that. I like that. Yeah, or mom has left the building. Either way, yes. So
Mama's left. The kids are on their own.
That's right, running around. God knows what's gonna happen now. All right, you guys. So the next question is, so number 1 is that true? And number 2 is, Where did I learn that?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be really powerful, especially as you're expanding your business, right? You are really expanding and it's like, that's not possible. One, is that true? Probably not, but to learn more about yourself, you can elevate that even more to, where did I learn that? Who told me that? So good, right?
I love that question. Because it deepens your self-reflection, right? And is it something I told myself, which goes back to our first sort of question, or am I hearing it out there in the ether? Is this somebody else saying that? And is that somebody else really influencing me and making me think that it's true? It actually really is not. I love that question.
Yeah, that's great.
Especially as an addition to the, is that true?
Yeah. It's been really powerful lately too. I think, especially with everything that happened in 2020, the social changes, these things, like, question, where did you learn that? Oh, I learned that. Somebody taught me that. Yeah. I learned that somewhere. Okay. So that's good. Ready for the last one? This one is high functioning codependence at its like glory, right? Like, we're at the top of the mountain shining how wonderful we are, right? Yeah. And this is that, am I holding myself back? It's this question of, or this belief, especially for women. I found this so interesting that he wrote this in, I want to say, the early 90s, which I just find incredible. But the idea is that if I'm successful, I will make other people feel bad.
Oh,
yeah.
Liz and I don't know nothing about that. We do not know.
I have a feeling there's a story. I have a feeling there's a story there. Who's going to tell it? Someone's got to tell it.
That's codependence at its finest.
It is, right? It absolutely is. Yeah. And so usually in the, like I said, you guys, I have this new term only for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I've been talking about this for years, right? So I'm like, holy crap. And there it is again. And there it is again. But the second part of that, usually what we'll talk about is, if we can complain about it, if we can talk about how hard it is and how much we have to suffer through all of our success, then other people won't feel bad. And that's where we belittle ourselves. And that's where we get into, oh, but I'm so busy. Oh, you don't know, it's so hard. Like all that stuff people do to make their success palatable enough for everyone else. And you can see how that's the high functioning codependence. I will do whatever I can, even if I drop dead, to make sure y'all are okay.
Right.
Right. And that idea of holding ourselves back and pulling back our own success so other people aren't affected by it.
Right.
And that it's time for us as women to really release that and to support each other in releasing that.
Yeah.
Stop giving other women accolades for dropping dead from fatigue. No. If someone is so selfless, help her go find herself because she has lost it. Right? No, that's not what we're doing anymore. Woman, go take a nap. I got the kids. Or yes, I will absolutely help you for free on that next thing. Or yes, I will help you with that. Or you're having trouble with this. I've got someone you can call. Don't let us continue to do this, because I think this is the way we're going to undo it. It's like women with women. We are the only ones who are going to understand at the depth how deep these upper limit problems go, because we have been spoon fed them for so long.
Yeah. And I love that. And all you can really do is ask, because if the codependence is so entrenched, then the person, oh no, I'm fine. Listen, do you need some help here? Would you like me to take the kids for an afternoon? Oh no, I'm fine. Then you got to be like, because then all of a sudden, then I'm being codependent.
That's right.
No. You have to. So yeah, just knowing when to offer and knowing when to just respect where they're at and step back.
Absolutely.
Because there are those people, who, and we all know them, and maybe we're even one of them ourselves, which will say, oh, no, I don't need any help. I'm fine. I got it. I got the kids. And just kind of staying in that stuck codependent place and harried place. Because at the end of the day, we have to make that choice, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I was curious. I was wanting to expand on that idea a little bit, because the question that I'm having as you both are talking is, what about the person who is doing what Liz was just describing, which is I got it. I don't need help. I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to even share that I have a problem. Right? Or I'm going to pretend that everything is okay. And I'm not going to say anything, even though I am choking. Right? Like, what do you do? Especially when you sense it, because right now I'm actually asking for a friend myself, because I know somebody who is doing that, who I can tell they are choking. It's a problem. And it's sort of like, you're not asking for help. I'll offer, you're not accepting, and not pushing it on them, but just, so how do you help them see the danger? Or do I?
Because I think that's going to be part of how we pop this bubble. I'm like, how do I say this? Like, I want to like blow this up, but that's not a very nice, way to look at this. I think role modeling is going to be our strongest tool in this. And so when you have a friend, and I'm a big believer, look, we're all coaches, right? So we know how to get at the heart of things with people, but we're not hired to be coaches for our friends. Right. And we really want to remember that that's not the thing. And my favorite way to do this, and I leave it, it's like anything else, we got to talk about it and then leave it, is, you guys, I just learned the coolest term. It's called high functioning codependence. And I saw myself all over this. Do you mind? I can't even believe what I just figured out about myself. And if you share, they get to pick up the tool or not. And that's their choices. We all know. Right. But if you share and you're the person raising your hand going, holy crap, you guys, I was answering emails till 1 a.m. and then I had to get up early because so-and-so had a project and this one had soccer practice and that one had ballet and there was no food in the like, you start talking like that and going, this is crazy and I'm not doing it anymore. And I have heard about high functioning codependence. You guys, we got to start talking about this. You talk about it and you share. And whether or not she talks about it, she'll think about it either way. Right. But you haven't put her on the spot and you haven't made her feel bad for her life choices because that's not our place. Does that make sense? Was that helpful, Lisa? Does that help?
100%. Because I think that especially those of us who are helpers, right? Which most of us as women are, and those of us who are coaches, our instinct is to see that and want to kind of come in and not do the savior thing, even though that might be the case as well. But it's sort of like, oh my God, like, stop. I want to help you to do this. And sometimes you're right, taking a step back and not pointing fingers at them and saying you're doing this and you're doing that, but kind of pointing inward, which I like to try to do sometimes and say, so I love that example of saying, hey, I just learned this thing. You want to hear about it? And sharing it and letting the information sit where it lands.
Yeah, I really like that too, because whenever we're sitting in our chair and saying, I'm noticing about you that this is going on. Like people can be like, okay, now I'm going into my shame place.
Yes.
But if you sit there and say,
if you're me, it's bitch, please, like, get out of my head. Like,
right. But if you're like, say if you spot something with your friend and you can identify, because usually we can all identify, right? Like you're saying, Sarah, I just found out, like the other day, I was so exhausted and I just realized that I really needed some help. And it was really hard for me to ask, blah, 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 blah. Do you ever feel like that sometimes? Or blah, 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 blah. And then that way that opens it up to, okay, well, this person can really identify with, yes, I know I'm going through it. And now I feel like I can open up because this other person gets me because they're going through the same thing, or they have gone through the same thing. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Essentially creating a safe space for this conversation to happen, if it does happen, or just, letting it sit. Because a lot of times people will say stuff to me and I won't even respond or process then. But if it's profound enough, I'm thinking about it weeks later, processing it weeks later, and doing something eventually. I might come back and start another conversation. Hey, that thing you said, which is probably a better approach, because really what we talk about is, you started the conversation this way, saying the stuff we need to solve is inside ourselves.
That's right.
It doesn't exist outside of ourselves.
Yes.
So that's where we have to start. And actually, that's a much better place to solve it anyway.
That's right. That's right. And I just don't think we can underestimate the power of role modeling. Right. And I'm not saying role modeling and like, look at me, but like having like people watch you go through it. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. Oh my God. And it really is getting back to, and this will unlock any upper limit problem you're having, by the way, getting to our shared humanity, that every single person walking around today has gone through what we've talked about today. Like nobody gets out of childhood without this. It's impossible. And so we want to find and discover that shared humanity. And that's why, Liz, when you were like, well, I've noticed, what you're doing is separating yourself from that shared humanity. And now that person, you've just triggered their abandonment, their disloyalty, their fundamental flaw. They're like on fire. Yeah. I mean, they're just like, habada, right? And they can't hear anything you're saying. Right. And that's why
they'll probably lash
you want to
out
not
at
do
you.
that.
They'll probably lash out at you. And then all of a sudden our codependence just spirals, right? Because now
we can look at the state of the world, right? And see how many 4-year-olds are running the world right now. Like you can see it, right? Like you can see it. Let's just be honest, right? And pointing it out and talking about it allows other people to see it too, right? And then it's not a make wrong fest. It's a discovery fest, and it's a, oh my gosh, what can we do better fest? And it does drop the shame, because you can't have rage without shame, right? Rage is just anger with shame on top of it. And that's why we're seeing so much rage, is because everybody's shaming everyone else instead of joining in the shared humanity and understanding that growing a business is hard. Releasing your belief about money is hard, right? Stretching yourself, showing up above the radar in the middle of a cancel culture is hard, right? Like this is like new stuff for us. And we want to jump in on the shared humanity piece of that instead of piling on the shame piece of that. And I will tell you, that is number one way to make your business stand out, is to make sure you're raising your hand saying that won't happen here, because I'm a person too.
100%.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, cool.
It's almost like there's nothing more triggering than starting your own business.
Oh, it's so true.
Like that just triggers on so many levels, right? And it's important for entrepreneurs, I think, to really see that and understand that that's, it's triggering for all of us, all of us that are starting businesses. And if we can all kind of not join together, but if we can all see what each other is going through, and it's the same stuff, it's the same shit that we're all going through at the same time.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what allows me to come on a podcast and say, ask yourself these questions, because it's always the same, right? Like, I don't have to know you to know you're going through this, and you don't have to know someone else to know they are too. And that just allows you to breathe, right? When someone's coming at you, it's like, oh my God, he or she's afraid I know they're fundamentally flawed. Changes the entire tone. Changes the entire tone of the conversation and your experience of the conversation, if you can get there. And it's hard. It's a skill. I believe this is a skill, and I believe we can all practice it and we can all learn how to do this, but it will make you the most extraordinary business owner, the most extraordinary person to work with, the most extraordinary person to refer people to and to share about, because you are showing up as a person and allowing other people to show up as people too. Even if they don't know why they love you so much, they'll be like, I don't know, I just feel better when I'm around her. That kind of a feeling, because you've done the work on you and your role. That's what I mean by role modeling, right? You're role modeling that there's a different way to experience money, experience love, experience success, experience challenging conversations, and experiencing growth, that we can go through this with a little bit of grace and a little bit of generosity. And like I said, that shared humanity, that we're all going through this right now.
Yeah, that's so badass.
I love it.
Where first off, two things. What type of retreats do you do? And what do you have for women who really want to learn more about this process and perhaps work with you?
Well, that's just my favorite question in the world. And first of all, thank you for asking that. But we have not been able to host like a live retreat, like in person, where we get to hug and giggle since 2019. Our last one was in October 2019. Who knew? We actually found out 3 people who left had COVID. They got COVID on the way home. Like, it's one of those, we didn't realize it, right? Because we weren't thinking about it yet, but they actually had it. Was crazy. just at the very cusp there, but I love doing that. That's called my Game On Girlfriend conference. And we are looking at trying to host that again in 2021, which I'm super excited about. And that is 2.5 days with me where we are doing exercises exactly like this for female business owners. So I love doing that. But if you just want to find out more, you can head on over to sarahwalton.com and have some fun over there. We have lots of freebies, but one I did want to talk about that we're working on a lot right now with women is my freedom calculator, right? So we talked a lot about money today, and you guys can grab that at sarahwalton.com/freedom. We try to make things easy, but this is where you can actually go in and calculate how much money your business needs to make so that you can feel free. So even if you feel like you're paying yourself enough, even if like all that stuff, but what's your number, like the one where you're just like, I can breathe now. Oh my God. So we have that for you right there. You can download that, and it is an actual calculator. Like you can sit down and figure out that exact number, and then we'll walk you through how to get to it. And so that's something I just love to share with people. And then I also have my own podcast. It's called Game On Girlfriend. Awesome. Game On Girlfriend. So you can find that there. I stole that from The West Wing. It's one of my favorite TV shows.
Ooh, I love that show too. Love
really
it.
Yeah.
And your book, what is the name of your book?
Redefining Success. Yeah. It's all about, again, I wish I hadn't written it 10 years ago now. Do you know what I mean? Now I'm like, I wish I'd written it yesterday because I would talk about high functioning codependence. Because part of the reason we don't take time out to redefine success for ourselves is it's been fed to us what it's supposed to look like. Right. And so we don't take the time to redefine it. And that's the other reason we created that calculator is like, you got to know what yours is. Not, I don't care what, Susie or Michelle's is. I want to know what yours is. And so it's redefining success. Yeah.
Excellent.
Awesome. Good.
You guys are the
stuff,
best.
Sarah.
Fun. Lisa and Liz show. No, I loved it. You guys are so much fun. It was such a joy to be here with you guys. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. And thanks for being our badass of the week.
You got it.